Okay. Uh, so we're in the middle of a series that's essentially it's a cycle, and what it is it deals with three different levels. What we want to create, all right, what we want to create is it's a wave of positivity. All right. Now, why do we want to create a wave? Why do I use the word wave? Tamara, what are you doing? What, do you, what is that?
She's crocheting, so I'm just playing with the yarn. Do you want to show?
Fine.
She's a thing for her
No, I'm
seat.
good. No, I'm good.
Wait.
I'm good. Okay, you play your thing, I'll do mine. So why do I call it why do I call it a wave of positivity? Because inevitable, I'm just repeating a little bit because we're, to get everyone into the zone. Inevitably, there's always high moments in life and there's low points in life. It's just regular. Communities have that, families have that, countries have that, history has that. So we don't want to get through the moments that are difficult. The reason being is because then there's a whole chunk of our life that's missing. Okay. Um, if you're the type of mother or father that's just kind of like, when you're not having a good day, everything kind of like falls apart, then there's an entire part of the day slash week that the kids just can't bank on you. And that's not what we want. So we don't want to get through it. We want to learn how to be productive in moments of challenge, because it's easy to be productive when everything's going smoothly, right? When everything's going great, when everything's going amazing. But it's the moments of challenge that bring us down. So why don't we just like let it pass? So there's two reasons for it. One is, like we said, it's just like it it there's parts of our life that we don't understand. That's number one. Number two, and if anyone's kind of taking notes, I want you to focus on this, like, and that's part of our discussion here, is the moments that are challenging, okay, are times that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is sending to us as messages to become the person that we need to be. And if you just avoid them and you don't kind of step into it and deal with it correctly, then you're not getting the message and you're just working on whatever it is you think you want to work on. So and slowly you do start to get a grip on it, although it kind of never goes away. But like I've told you many times, like I have a lazy personality. I know, like, people sometimes don't think so, but it is that way. Like, I'm firstborn Sephardic male Leo. Like, everything just tells me not to move a finger and it just should be served to me. That has been I went from my wife from my mother to my wife. It's like both of them don't let me touch stuff. So I've had to understand that, and I've had to learn how to work with that and to create productivity. Okay, that's why I surround myself with certain people, and that's why I take certain obligations and so on and so forth. I don't fight it. I learn to work with it. Okay, that's kind of a small, tiny little idea behind. All right. So we there's th so and we want to create a wave, because when you're riding a wave, it carries you. It carries you in the moments that are not as strong to begin with. So, for example, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Um, I was I just like really silly. I was working on a project like 2 years ago, whatever it was, in Miami, and it was like it involved some level of physical labor, and it was like helping to build like a certain type of school, blah blah blah, and like we had to go through a like the city came to give us approval, and we had to take out nails from like pieces of wood. Okay, but the nails and the pieces of wood were like were like behind, you know, whatever, behind the wood or whatever. It was very hard to get to, like, sit on the floor and all those kinds of. So I was surrounded by, at the time, it was people that weren't Jewish, right? And I was sitting on the floor and I was like with this like plier trying to get it out and I'm like sitting there for like 25 minutes, and they're standing on my head and they go to me and they say, I'll never forget. They say, "Do you just feel like cursing?" I was like, Why would I curse? What is that going to help the situation? What do you mean? You don't want to just curse? Like, just curse, just say it. It's like, what? I was so, it was so contrary. Like, it was so far from us. Like, we just don't. I don't know. Why should I curse? Kilo, we don't talk lashon hara. We try not to even raise our voices. You tell me I should curse. right? So there's a kind of understanding here when it comes to creating a wave, a world that's going to carry you, that doesn't let you drop to the lowest level. Because we don't want to constantly pick ourselves up. You don't want to be, and this discussion is for you if you find yourself, hey, hi, how are you? You never get older, huh? So this, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You, um, um, sorry, can't multitask. This discussion is for you if you find yourself in a cycle of constantly having to pick yourself up. Do you know what I mean? Like your life is more like, okay, up and then down, and then you have to like pick yourself up and start again, and times of peace and quiet, and then pick yourself up and start again. That starting again is what we want to avoid, because it destroys the momentum of our growth. We're supposed to have our low points, but not start again. We're supposed to continue from that lower point, still moving. Does that make sense? I'm really trying to work hard to explain to you, to explain for us to study together the concept of why this getting into a wave and a cycle of positivity is so important. Does that make sense? Does anyone want to like, does anyone want to ask on this? Am I not being, is this not coming out clear? Is it good? Yes. Okay, I'll assume so. Okay, great. All right. So there's three steps
Wait,
in this
Kai
that
has a question.
yeah, I'm like working really hard to get this across, but I don't know how it's on your end. So tell me, yeah. Shayla, what's up? Yeah.
Oh, um, so let's just say you're riding the positivity, but like you like first 5 months and then you fall. Is that what you're referring to? Like, let's just say like you just had a bad night or like a bad thing and like
If you ride the wave for 5 months, all
is that
right,
yeah,
then you
uh-huh.
are Mashiach ben David. Like I
Oh,
don't know.
so in terms of
I'm not
no, but
talking
like
about that.
in terms of timeline, like you're meaning like from week to week, you should be going riding like this. But let's
Yeah,
just say
like
you do fall.
yeah, but your fall is not it's not so drastic, and you're not in like, okay, I have to start again from this topic. Like let's say someone has an anger issue, right? So like, and then they like lose it. I promised myself I wouldn't say that to whoever it is. I promised myself I wouldn't use those words. I promised myself I wouldn't lose it. And then you lost it again. Now you're starting from scratch again. There's something wrong with the system. It needs to be like, okay, they made me upset, but this time they couldn't even tell. Okay, so we're not picking ourselves up from rock bottom again. You get it? Then there are people like, I mean, like there are people like that. There are people that when it comes to certain aspects, they totally get destroyed. Like their anger, like they're really nice and sweet and blah blah blah, but once you touch their toes, they become an animal. Okay, and sometimes, and in many instances, I've seen like the next 3 hours later, like, why did I do that? Blah blah. You're not in a cycle of positivity with this topic. A cycle and a wave means like, okay, I'm gonna fall, but it's not gonna be like a dive. It'll just be a slip. I can get up and keep running. So what we want is this like cycle going on. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, amazing. So we started with identify this, and this is based on Mesilat Yesharim. Okay, I'm just recapping. It's based on Mesilat Yesharim, that Mesilat Yesharim has three stages in the beginning. It's Chovat Adam Be'olamo, which we spoke about, which is identifying. Okay, and we spoke about this idea of learning to identify in moments of noise. Okay, you cannot you cannot approach moments of noise and chaos and confusion and challenge with just waiting to get through it. It's not right. You're missing out. We are missing out on an entire facet of our personality. Okay, you have we have to learn how to be productive in moments of confusion, chaos, um, lack of clarity. There has to be a strength of character within that. A, for yourself and your relationship with Hashem. Okay. B, with your spouse, and C, most importantly, your children. Like they need to be able to rely on you, and they need that consecutiveness. So it's a lot of mental game to be able to do that. So that's learning to have a relationship with in moments of noise, which is what we spoke about last week as well. And the second part is the idea of like silence, of how do we create silence in our minds. And I kind of said this before. Number one is I think everyone, and this is just a practical tool. I don't think you should have any social media on your phone. I think it's okay for you to have it, you know, on your computer and check Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is your thing. But someone to have access to your mind on a constant basis like that is not right. There's no moments of silence. That's number one. That's just from a practical perspective. But in a spiritual perspective, the essence of silence is built on bitachon, in my opinion. What does that mean? And how do we, and it's just a fancy word for us right now. We're just saying it, doesn't fully seep through. If we really want to take it a step deeper, then we have to, ready everybody? We have to work on the world of non-judgment. I need us to work together to that when we encounter certain things in our life, we we have this tendency to like always look for the answer. What does God want? Why is this happening to me? What could I do about it? Who's right? Who's wrong? What do I think? Like then what happens is you're just and you're just like your brain is like an engine. What happens at that point? So that's what we said. Like when you're sitting on a lake, right, and you throw a small pebble, you can only feel the the, the little waves, so to speak, if everything's calm. So learning how to let go. For anyone here that's OCD, anyone here that's a control person, black and white, like always wants black and white type of thing, this is like for you. This is a you thing. You always need to know. Anyone who's had a childhood where they've had to control things, like you've had to always maneuver with your parents, like that kind of thing, be step ahead, that kind of thing. This is for you because you've trained yourself from a young age to if I don't take care of myself, then no one will. So then we bring that relationship to Hashem as well,
Rabbi, can I ask you something?
I guess.
How does
Yeah,
this
of course.
work with a busy life? Because it's very easy to think like I wish to have moments of silence in my life, but it's almost impossible, like
Right. So this is more of a mind muscle than it is a practical life muscle. Meaning, blah, 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 like Baruch Hashem, I'm sure your life is full of busyness, right? But where's your mind? That no one keeps busy. That's you. You decide what goes in and out. So and your life, even within the chaos, like within the chaos, right? Like I have my grandkids are staying by me now. So there's one grandkid that like every night, like at 3, 4 o'clock, screams his head off as if I don't know what's happening to him, right? It's like every single night. Okay. You can kind of almost expect it. It's a life of chaos, but where's your mind? Are you at that moment like upset, impatient, yelling? Like this is how it works, and it's going to be a good few years like that. But where's your mind? Are you trying to always understand and control the situation, or at certain? And we can't. This is not your whole life because your life, our life needs to have direction and motivation and structure. But there are times that Hashem just wants us to let go, and let's just say, even in a chaotic world, we have to at certain times be able to go through the motion, but our mind is letting go. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Um, does that make sense? Do you understand, Sandy? Does that make sense? Like you're busy. You're not. You can at 12 o'clock. You can probably not sit down and have a cup of tea without someone tugging at you or throwing something or smoke coming out of the kitchen or something like that. That's not what we're talking about. It's not what Hashem wants, right? But where's your mind with that? Meaning like yes, this is part of the process Hashem wants me to have, and so on. I need to let Him run with it, and it gets even bigger as your kids get older. Like when they enter into that stage of teenage, there's a lot of like you're contending with another being. Your little kids now, you can pick up and put in the room. go in the room, they'll go in the room. At a certain point, when they get bigger than you, now what are you gonna do? Now he's bigger than me. Now what am I gonna do? And there's all kinds of things that happen in their life that doesn't work in accordance, or you have to learn as a parent to like, okay, you're trying your best, and now I have to learn how to let go of the situation and just treat it calmly, even though it's not solved. That's the point. You get it? Even though it's not solved. So that's the idea of creating silence. I'm not talking about like the first part of like not having social media on your phone was more the physical part. But the second part is we all speak about bitachon, but what does it mean? It means that you come to certain situations that we just have to not judge it and learn how to let it go and understand that Hashem, it's his job to figure it out. Financial cycle, 2008, your husband's changing jobs, blah, blah. Okay, now what do? Not in your control. You need to stop trying to figure it out. I don't think you should sit on the couch and do nothing, but at a certain point, you have to be able to let go. So that's the silence in the brain that helps us to identify what it is we should be working on. Because I want us all together to really zone in on becoming the best people that we could become. And the stage in that is to identify what it is, what we're supposed to work on. Okay, and that was that step. Next step we're going to get into is removing negativity. All right, that was just kind of an intro, I guess we could say. Now it's about removing negativity. So the first thing we need to talk about is removing negative thoughts, because it's, we all know how it is. It's the negative thoughts that are within that affect the action that's outside. So for example, I'm going to read off a few points of negative thoughts, and then Hashem will give some Torah examples as well. Our minds have clever and persistent ways of convincing us of something that isn't really true. These inaccurate thoughts reinforce negative thinking. So essentially, there are four common thoughts. One is black and white thinking. So you see everything as either one way or the other, right? The second is personalizing. You assume you're to blame for everything that goes wrong, and there's kids like that. Someone who, like an older girl that might come from a divorced home, will naturally think like, "Hey, this is my fault. I should be able to do something about it," and so on. And that the issue with that is that thought process of personalizing. I've seen it with my students that they might be well advanced in their age, but they still get into the mode of like, everything is my fault and I have to do something about it. Do you know what I mean? Again, it's that, and what does that do? That'll drag the person down, because you're trying to solve an equation that you have no strength over. All right. Filter thinking is choosing to see only the negative side of a situation. Right? People have that, like, they'll naturally enter into a situation and notice any of the negative stuff. They don't necessarily see like, the positive thing. You go out to a restaurant, simple and silly examples. You go out to a restaurant, you notice how it's not clean. Like, okay, I get it, but like, why is that what you see? Why is that what you see? So sometimes people have had to do that for their own thought process, because it was the only way they could deal with like not getting attention from their parents or their spouse. They've kind of had to pull it out, and the way they pulled it out was by being dramatic or overly, so seeing the negativity and bringing out the negativity. But once you start doing that to yourself, so you're seeing the world in that way. Those are negative thoughts that once again spiral out and can drag a person down. And the last one is what we call catastrophizing, which means you're assuming the worst possible outcome is going to happen. Now, where does that come from? That comes from like fear, meaning there are some people that they grew up in a situation where they weren't, let's call it like, defended by their parents or whatever it might be, and they kind of had to protect themselves. And the best thing was for them to get ready for anything that would come their way. So they would always say, well, if I get ready for the worst possible outcome, then I'm ready for anything. Because I could see, nothing's going to catch me by surprise. It's a person who's kind of like scared to let go, because letting go means getting hurt. So I need to always be on the defense and assume that the worst is going to happen in the situation, and then I'm ready for anything. But the problem, first of all, clearly they're not seeing the world as the beautiful place that it is. Okay. And secondly, they're not seeing the beautiful opportunities that Hashem's trying to give them. Doesn't mean the world is rosy, right? We're all living in a very difficult time right now. Okay. Those of you that are not here, I don't think anyone on the call is here. You have to understand that's a completely different reality that's going on here now in Israel. Like nothing is a given anymore. But with that, our relationship with Hashem did not start today or October 7th. It's been for thousands of years. And we know Hashem is good. We don't understand it, but we don't have to assume the worst possible scenario. My point is these are negative thinking tracks, whether it's black or white. Sorry, I have my notes here. Whether it's black or white, personalizing, filter thinking, or catastrophizing, these are negative thoughts. That if the person has that in their system, no matter how much you're going to want to be positive and be strong and take on certain goals, your mind yourself will slow you down. The mind will be the worst enemy. Does that make sense? So it's really the negative thoughts is really where we have to, and we have to identify that we have this, and then we have to work on removing this negative thought. Okay, so I'm going to speak specifically about this the case of jealousy, because the Torah kind of gets to that from the get-go. Let's just work with that a little bit. And there are I have students that are first of all, there are people that are naturally born jealous as children, like Bezrat Hashem, like with children, there are kids that just have that jealous gene. You know, they're always the nebuch. They're always the one that's not like sandwich kids have that. It's usually not a firstborn syndrome unless whatever, but usually like a sandwich kid, in order to get attention, always has to say like, okay, look at me, I never get, and then they're very sensitive about like any space of giving up of their comfort, you know? So like jealousy is like is that kind of factor. And also in our Sephardic tight-knit communities, you're kind of like always living with what the other person has. I think that's the beauty of living in Jerusalem as opposed to other cities in Israel, even in the world, is like there's a lot of breathing space here. The families don't necessarily like intertwine. Everyone kind of does their thing in a way. So there's kind of a beauty to that. Okay, but the Sephardic communities have that. Some kids are born with it to begin with. So and the Torah deals with it from the get-go. Like, let's just talk about like Cain and Hevel, Yosef and the Esav and Esav, right, and Yaakov, the Yosef and the brothers, right, Korach, Bilam. It's all jealousy. So let's talk about, we want to identify, we want to get rid of our jealousy, right? I have jealousy. So do we understand together how it's not just enough to say, don't be jealous? Do you understand how that's not a solution? I'm assuming you're saying yes, right? Okay, let's assume everyone's saying yes. Fine. Honestly, I'm gonna give also my class without video. So here we go. Is that better? Right. So it's not enough just to say, well, but I am jealous. I'm jealous, but don't be. It's not gonna work. I mean, just being proactive positively, if you don't eradicate and pull out things that are negative, are not going to work. So let's say Cain and Hevel, right? It was a deeper form of just than jealousy. First of all, Cain was the firstborn, so he has rights. Okay. Secondly, like what was the deeper part he had to get rid of? He was scared that if Hashem is giving credit to Hevel, who's not the firstborn, I'm going to be losing all my rights. Right? So that's a completely different angle. It's like now he's in the world of, I'm not going to get what I deserve. So it won't just help him to say, don't be jealous, because you have a fear here of not getting what you deserve. Like even with children, right? Excuse me. With children, if you do have a child that's naturally more jealous type, you do have to be careful. Like, what do you give other kids in front of them? Do you know what I'm saying? If you have a goody goody kid who never gets in trouble and all that kind of stuff, and you have this kid who's like thrown out of school every single year, so now you do have to treat them differently because the kid who's in trouble all the time is got this, let's say, fear of losing out. He's not going to get what he deserves, so that's going to be a very sensitive point to him. So removing negativity would mean, okay, you want to work on your jealousy. Okay, but let's get this straight. You also have a problem with thinking like, I'm not going to end up with what I'm supposed to be getting. And there's a whole like letting go aspect here that needs to be worked on. Okay, Esav, the brothers, Yosef, and so on and so forth. Where was where should there have been jealousy between two brothers and there weren't? You'll see that this is the answer. Where should there have been in the Torah two brothers that one should have been jealous from the next? Charlene, you know this.
Moshe and Aaron.
Moshe and Aaron, very good. Aaron was older than Moshe. Moshe gets the center stage, and Aaron gets pushed aside. And Moshe didn't agree to go down to Egypt until Hashem told him, "Don't worry, right? All right, Ephraim Moshe, very good. That too, right? Don't worry, don't go down. You don't be scared because Aaron's not going to be jealous. Why? Because the solution was working, meaning the solution to not having jealousy was understanding that the humility was understanding that Hashem gives you what you need. It's understand, that's why that relationship worked, and there wasn't jealousy between them. Okay, so we're talking about the
I have a
next step
question.
after, right? After I'll just give this, talking about the next step of identifying, you want to get to the core of what's causing you that emotion that's negative. Okay, you're feeling an emotion that needs to get rid of. And it could happen. I don't know if you've met people like this, but in business, you just unfortunately you come across. There's certain people that, Charlene, I'll take your question in a second. There's certain people that they have access to this button in your heart that's called dafka. You know what dafka means in Hebrew? Like on purpose. I won't get into this specifically, but there's a specific business relationship where there's this person that owes the company money, and his personality is I mean, you know me for years, so I'm not that bad, but like his personality is so rude and obnoxious that he just presses that button on you that says, okay, now we're just gonna fight. So I have to work on myself to know, like, hey, don't approach this person with the way they're handling it. Approach it with what the Torah kind of dictates. All right. So it would really be about removal of negative character traits before anything else. Charlene, yeah, you had a question.
No, I was just thinking that was it that Aaron was happy with himself. He knew his purpose and he knew who he was, so he wasn't trying to be Moshe because it was so easy for Aaron to be Moshe. Like
Right.
if Aaron wanted to, he could be jealous.
Absolutely.
It was nothing. Moshe got to leave, he didn't. Moshe was summoned by Hashem. He could have said I was there the whole time, but didn't Hashem summon me?
Right. Right.
So
Excellent.
what
Like,
did he do? What
I
did
think he had a direct he had Aaron was serving Hashem. I'm not serving Moshe. I'm serving Hashem. So therefore, Hashem decides. It happens to be he's my brother, but Hashem still decides. And I'm never gonna get rid of my jealousy if I don't realize where I have to fix within that aspect. Just to say don't be jealous won't work,
But he knew
right?
who he knew his purpose and
Yeah,
like he
he
was
knew his
happy
purpose, he
being
knew who he was. Right, exactly. And that's why he didn't experience the jealous. Cain and Hevel was very different. Cain wasn't looking for the gifts to give to Hashem as much. That's why he gave from the worst. He was doing it for himself. So your jealousy has to start with you're not being authentic. I'm just
authentic
giving,
means being you.
yeah, and we've spoken about this. Like, I'll take it really quickly to anger as well, right? Like, we only get upset for one reason. Not why did you do that, but why did you do that to me? It's not the why did you do that. It's how dare you take my parking spot? How dare you cut me off? When you see someone else in the parking lot that takes someone else's parking spot, you don't get upset. Or even if you do, definitely not as much as it happens to you. So the core of your anger and so on and so forth is first remove the me part out of it when it's justified, right? Then we could start working on you being empathetic and patient and so on and so forth. Connect your relationship directly to Hashem and so on and so forth. All right. Okay. That kind of gives us to a conclusion when we talk about negative. Today we spoke about like negative thoughts, and we spoke about really. We spoke about the idea of bitachon being the idea of non-judgment, which is something we all need to work on. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be in the active world, right? If you have your kids, you have your work, you have your whatever it might be, you need to be active and aggressive and all that. But it's the balance between Ezo Asher Samach Bechelko and Chayav Adam Loma B'Shvili Nivra Olam. It's like you try your hardest, but the outcome is always based on what Hashem wants it to be. And that's the world of like not judgment, just kind of going with what Hashem wants while you're still doing your effort. Doesn't negate lazy people like me for not doing their effort. Okay. Okay. Next week, Bezat Hashem, we will, God willing, get into dealing with negative people. All right. And then Bezat Hashem will move forward with some other stuff. All right, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Great to see you. My
How's
pleasure. I'm so
Moshe?
happy to see you. Moshe's good. We
Thank
spoke to
you.
him. Let me pause the recording.
Thank you
Moshe's
so
doing well.
much.